Hi, Nan.
Hi.
Hi, been a while. Welcome, welcome.
Yes, yes. So is it afternoon now or evening?
It's I guess I'm few hours ahead of you, so now I have 6 p.m.
Oh, right.
You have
Evening.
like 4 or something like that.
Yes, around three approximately.
Right, right, right. All right. I don't think anyone else. It looks like nobody else is gonna be joining today, so I think we can just get into it. I have prepared some agenda. So I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen. We can go through the agenda, make any amendments. So there we go. Share screen. Oh, is this gonna work? I'm not sure. System preferences. Oh, okay. I didn't use this computer before. Um, for Zoom. Hopefully, I don't need to restart. Oh, I do need, so I'll be right back.
Season.
All right. It should work now. All right.
Yes, it's visible. Yeah.
Cool. Okay, so let's get started. Welcome to it's interesting date. Welcome to uh 4th of 2024. April 4th, Aries-vcx community call. Uh, our Hyperledger antitrust policy is in effect as displayed on the screen. And let's get into the agenda. So let's first review what's planned here and make sure um, we we are happy. We don't want to change something or add something. So there's a few announcements I would like to make. Uh, and then pretty much the usual announcements about the app store presence, kind of potential vision for the future, and highlight some blog posts on the Hyperledger. Also, the usual stuff, reviewing the work which has been done and which is in progress since the previous uh, Aries-vcx public call. And lastly, there's some updated diagram which I sketched out and presented 2 weeks ago on this call. There's some updates to it and it's a bit prettier. So I put it here. We can go through it perhaps briefly. Yeah, so that's what on agenda right now. And then do you have anything you would like to add or
No, I don't have any major updates actually.
sure. Okay. Yeah, well, anyway, if you have, any oh, George, we have a George on the call. I didn't notice. I just suddenly saw that there's 3 participants.
Hey, sorry, I snuck in.
Yeah, it's all good. Yeah, I was just reviewing the agenda for today. I don't know, George, do you have anything you want to like cover today, perhaps?
No, no, not from me. I'll just be listening mostly.
All right, okay. All right. So let's continue in that case. So a few announcements. It's been I guess known for a while. But I guess announcing it first time officially on this spot on the Aries-vcx calls. So apology for a short moment. I'll need to find a calmer place to continue. All right, apologies for that. I'm resuming now. So I wanted to officially announce here that APSA will be unfortunately withdrawing the activity in Aries-vcx and SSI, Hyperledger SSI ecosystem itself holistically. This was also, I was also announcing this yesterday on a Aries workgroup call. And as a part of that, I did a presentation of the current state of art in the repository and kind of highlighting some strengths and weaknesses and what the potential future might look like, given that there would be a development by some other company. So I'll quickly highlight those like future visions which I have, and obviously might differ like by different players. And APSA is not, APSA is not the only maintainer of the repo, although probably significant. But as is given today, the maintainers team also consists of our fellow George and Nayan, who are on the call. So like thank you for undertaking that you've been undertaking this responsibility activity in the past years and months. So sharing my future, given that APSA is withdrawing part of APSA, as it stands today, I have not yet secured a place which would enable me to continue investing a significant portion of my time into development. But if I manage to find such a place, things I would like to do, or I would like to other companies, or taking this over and doing, where I would like to see this going in general is a few items. I have idea for kind of something I'm referring these days to as DFRS, Ditcom Framework Rust, which would be additional layer on top of Aries-vcx, kind of more framework-ish, perhaps borrowing some concepts from AFJ, making it more event-oriented, more user-friendly, more batteries included. I was presenting this idea 2 weeks ago on the Aries-vcx call. Then I also got the updated diagram here, as I mentioned before. We can get back to this perhaps. Secondly, I would love to see, we did, especially props to, kudos to Mira, who did lots of work here. We did lots of like work on implementing parts of W3C specs, and particular DIDs, DID parser we have, and DID document crate. So I would love to see these things becoming kind of, go to a resource when you want to work with DIDs and DID documents, just like there's a one URL crate, which most of the other crates in the ecosystems are using. I would love this DID and DID document crates to become more popular. I think main pre-requirement here is to actually start publishing it and make sure that it is like nice documentation, nice readme examples, it's user friendly, all those things. Next up, Ditcom v2. I think I see the other players in the ecosystem. There's increasingly talking about Ditcom v2. AFJ was, I think, already implemented, if not everything, at least parts of it. Akapai is, as far as I know, like starting to look into Ditcom v2. So I think this should be on the radar for Aries-vcx in the future. Also, we had like amazing work from Nayan here on the call, who did the implementation of mediator agent 1 year ago as in the role of mentee. And there's like two things outstanding, which are significant, like significantly outstanding, and could really, I think, enable, if implemented, could enable adoption in the Aries ecosystem. And that would be WebSockets as the big one, and then more technical or like internal implementation of integration of did exchange in favor of current connection protocol. So this would be amazing to see. Likewise, mediation client to make it easy actually to start use this mediator from Rust environments. And then also like new credential types. There was recently as the JOT implementation. Where was it though? SD-JOT. Well, there was SD-JOT implementation in Rust recently done by DSR team, and it's out there on GitHub. So perhaps having a look into that, seeing if we can integrate that along with AnonCreds into the V2 protocols of issuance and presentation. And then this one is like a big one, perhaps most unclear from all of them. But I was in discussion with some mobile people who do mobile applications, and one desirable property which seems to exist among mobile developers possibly would be to actually, well, if you use Aries-vcx, it kind of comes with its own storage, and ASCAR, which stores stuff in SQLite database by default. But it would be very cool to enable using, for example, the iOS native secure storage to store sensitive material. So this would possibly be actually like changes not necessarily even on VCX level, but maybe more on the ASCAR level. Likewise, enabling running stuff in browser, as a browser plugin. You can't really, I guess, have a SQLite database. So that would be something cool to see, but probably the most challenging, or all of these things, or at least the most unclear at the moment.
I suppose the mobile secure storage. Imagine like if we were exposing the wallet trait through Unify, then I guess someone would be free to build their own wallet interface using, you know, iOS's Enclave and things like that. They could do
Yeah,
it.
but the thing is, the wallet, the interface as it stands today, it also assumes that the implementer has a whole bunch of encryption capabilities.
Yeah.
Which you would have to re-implement in on your iOS level. So like, there's do I have it somewhere? Base wallet, right? Base wallet. Did wallet, right? We have stuff like sign, for example, and this is implemented in ASCAR or the VDR tools wallet. So if you implement this in the native environment, you can use the native storage, but you also have to implement lots of cryptographic logic. So perhaps it will be possible to just, with some ASCII refactoring, find a way to only replace like really the bottommost layer so that the data wouldn't be stored in the SQL database, but rather in whatever you plug in. You know what I mean? And then still reuse all of the encryption logic which ASCII kind of brings in.
Yeah. Good point.
Do you have any, George, you are doing the mobile stuff. Do you have any, have you run yourself into this kind of requirement or would you find this kind of thing desirable to store stuff in iOS storage rather than in the SQLite database created by managed by ASCII?
Yeah, I can't say for sure yet. I know like in the what is it, agent reference framework, if you're familiar with that EU document specifying wallet requirements for credentials, there's a section which talks about like what types of data need to be stored securely using the device secure storage, like the native device secure storage. And so there's a couple things like key pairs and whatnot that need to be in the device as required by the ARF. And so I guess if you're abiding by that ARF document, then yeah, I guess it would be very desirable and maybe required that you're storing it in the enclaves.
Are you saying ARF? What does it stands for?
Agent reference framework. Yeah, hopefully that'll
Is it
show up.
Aries or is it like Aries? No. Oh, okay. Is it?
No, it's just sort of verifiable credentials in general. Yeah, it might be too vague of a term.
Okay, we can, I guess, look it up later. I would be interested to see that. From what you said, you mentioned only the key pass. I wonder if per that document it's okay to have this kind of encrypted file storage if the keys, the material for decryption is stored, in the device native storage, if that would be considered okay, or if that document requires to store all of the keys actually in the native storage, because that's kind of where it that will make a big difference, I guess.
Yeah, I'm not sure entirely. I think the language isn't perfect in the document.
I think at a given moment, anyway, everyone is, at least in the Aries community, I think everyone's pretty much storing stuff using ASCII and therefore storing the stuff separately in encrypted files, essentially. But yeah, I know, I heard this, as a property, desirable property somebody was looking for. So I'm not sure how, I'm not sure if it's reasonable, really, if you have the keys, if you ultimately have that encrypted file protected by some kind of key, which is stored in the native storage. If that suffices or not. But anyway,
just correcting myself. It's the architecture and reference framework is what it's called. The
agent
EU.
architecture and reference.
Oh, you might need to add like digital ID. Replace agent with digital ID.
Okay. I guess it must be this one.
Yep. Yes, I believe this is going to be enforced for some digital ID apps, things of that nature.
All right, I'll definitely have a look at this. I'll add the link on the wiki later. I have some updates here. I'll reload the page.
I think Animo is working in this area as well. They're building like some Rust component which lets you create key pairs using the iOS and Android secure enclave.
Oh, is it? Are they?
So I think that's all along the same lines, perhaps related to the ARF.
Yeah, I should connect with them. Find out
That's cool.
what is it you're building. No?
Yeah, and that sounds cool. Like being able to create native key pairs from Rust.
Yeah, some cool sort of APIs that they're calling into, I think, to bind into the native system.
Yeah, I can imagine something similar also working for a browser potentially. No, don't know much about it, but I can imagine the overall architecture being kind of similar. Anyway, so let's get over this as time is ticking. One more note here within the announcements, which I wanted to mention, was the very cool blog post. Which took, I think, lots of effort and time to write from Nine to basically summarize the entire experience in the mentorship over the past year. So Nan, yeah, thanks a lot for this. I think this is great for Hyperledger and also for Aries-vcx to kind of highlight what we've done here and kind of especially highlight the mediator itself, give some awareness to this cool component you have built. So yeah, thank you for this.
Thank you for giving me the chance to work on it.
Yeah,
Awesome.
pleasure all over on our side. Okay, and so now back to the usual, a bit more mundane, if you will, part of the call, since we do this every single time, is reviewing the stuff which was done. So, not, I guess, any like significant things necessarily, but there was some improvements in DPR4 implementation, which is rather new. So there's still some kind of updates and amendments happening once in a while. It also came with some additional enhancements to the DIT core components, particularly the DID document. Yeah, it's all documented in these PRs. There was also kind of related to that, there was changes to the document in terms of how we deal with building it. So previously we had a custom builder for the ID document, but ultimately it just represented kind of an awkward tool. It was making it hard to modify the edit document, which from some perspective can be arguably like desirable property, and it's somewhat safer, that the DID document doesn't get modified by accident, and became very explicit. Basically, whenever you wanted to modify the DID document, you had to convert it into the document builder and do the modification only to build it into the document again. And sometimes there was functions when we were passing the document builder around, because what we really wanted in those functions was to modify some kind of the document for whatever reason. For example, when we were decoding did peer 2 into did document, we had to kind of iteratively build up the DID document, but because DID document itself didn't have any way to be modified, any modification functions, and the fields are internal, we actually had to pass around DID document builder. So that was a bit awkward, and ultimately Rust is pretty explicit about mutability. So the change here was, in a nutshell, just adding a way to mutate the ID document itself, such as adding assertion methods, or, well, basically modifying anything, but not on some kind of builder, but rather on the DID document itself. Also, it doesn't really make sense to have a builder, because builder is supposed to help you out some kind of complex structure, but DID document has only one required property, and that's the ID. Everything else is optional and can be empty. So the builder didn't really have justification to exist. So that was removed in favor of making the ID document easier to mutate. Yeah, next up, there was a change in Aries-vcx core. This is something we wanted to do for a long time, and that was breaking down Aries-vcx core into multiple components. So here we extracted the wallet part into separate crate. There'll be similar PRs following this up. There's already one in progress, opened just recently by Ondra, to take out the ledger part of Aries-vcx core as a separate crate without functional changes, just kind of breaking it down. So that's kind of underway currently. And lastly, there's one more item here. We have containerized and packaged mediator. So this was done by Nayan. And yeah, this was, as the title says, basically building the Docker container of the mediator in the CI and publishing it to Docker registry. So now it's very easy to pull the Docker image if you want to use it and deploy somewhere. It's out here among the published packages. I believe, yeah, there we go, mediator. So we're publishing it now. Very cool. Next section, the stuff which is in progress. Yeah, as I mentioned, the extraction of the ledger component. We have a new contributor who decided to undertake one of the issues, good first issues we have out there open. Is integrating the ID type in the messages crate. Has not yet finalized, so this will need some more effort from Krishna, GH Krishna. But if you by any chance are listening to this, I appreciate the initiative. I'll be looking forward for the next work. Hopefully we can take this to successful end. So thank you. We have also some drafts by Ondra ongoing. So there's two. One is draft of the Medic client. So yeah, it's a draft. I had a bunch of comments here just to make it easier to actually start integrating with essentially any valid implementation of Aries DITCOM mediator. Not even necessarily the mediator which we have wrote. Of course, it should work with that one, but ultimately it should be general enough to work with any implementation. There is like is already at least two mediators out there. Akapai, as I know, can run in some kind of mediator mode, and I think there's something in TypeScript. Not sure if it's built on top of AFJ. So it would be cool to try to test this package with those existing mediator implementations to kind of have a cross validation that things are working. But yeah, for starter, it'll be great just to have it working with our implementation and then assure the interop over time. And then the other draft by Ondra is addressing one of the issues I opened recently, and that's about how we represent keys parsed from DID document. So DID document can contain verification methods, objects as per W3C vocabulary, and verification method object usually contains some kind of keys, and there's a number of ways or approaches you can take when it comes to the in-memory representation of those keys. So right now we just kind of reflect the serialized form, how those keys are serialized in the DID documents, but you could argue that that's not the most optimal way to actually represent those keys in memory. Once you read the DID document, you don't necessarily care or want to in memory maintain the original encoding, and so you don't necessarily care whether the DID document you read was representing a key in some multi-base format or base 58. That kind of becomes irrelevant. You really just want to typically work with the raw bytes to encrypt something or decrypt something, verify something, things like that. So this PR is addressing those concerns. And Ondra had some insights here, so we had a bit of a discussion about it, and I think we found a good way to move this forward. And that's kind of it in terms of things being done and being worked on. Do you folks have any thoughts if I went too perhaps too fast, or if I didn't give enough time to interrupt and interject and comment on something?
The only thing that caught my eye was talking about DIDCOM v2, and maybe AFJ has started getting support for DIDCOM v2. Is Aries ready for DIDCOM v2? Like, wouldn't all the message structures, the various different protocol messages, need to get updated for it to be DIDCOM v2 compliant?
Yeah, definitely. I think there will be. I'm not exactly sure how to approach it yet. On the nitty-gritty level, the actual implementation, I would probably just start a new crate, something like DIDCOM2 messages or messages 2, and reflect there the DITCOM v2 message structure, which is different than the DITCOM v1 messages. Perhaps just for like general review, we can have a quick look to compare those. Aries-vcx issue protocol v1 and from v2. Is it diff? I guess, yeah. Yeah, so as you suggested, those messages in DITCOM v1 and DITCOM v2 looks quite different, a bit different. In my opinion, DITCOM v2 is a lot nicer. So just wondering, how, since we are just three of us, how familiar are you guys with DITCOM v2 and the differences between DITCOM v1 and DITCOM v2?
Somewhat with the message structure things. I sort of understand some of the things they remapped.
Nan, are you familiar with DITCOM v2?
No, I once took a look, but I'm not working with it, so
Right.
yeah, I recollect the details.
Yeah, so I'll quickly like describe the main things. I guess 90% of the magic where it's at. So basically in DITCOM v1, let's take some example message. We always had the type of the message, and that basically dictates the schema of the message. Some of the things were shared for every single DITCOM v1 message. For example, the ID that was required, but then all the other fields, those were defined by the schema of the particular message type. So for offer credential, there will be expected to find perhaps a comment, a credential preview, and some kind of attachments. And some of these fields would be optional, and some of them would be required. So it's kind of very flat structure. Everything's mixed up together. This is thought out like more nicely, like more separated in DITCOM v2. So in DITCOM v2, you also have type, just like in DITCOM v1, which tells you what kind of message you are dealing with. But then for the like type specific fields, those would be always encapsulated inside the body attribute. So you will always be sure at high level what the DITCOM v2 message is gonna look like, what to expect. You will always find type. You will always find to. We can talk about this next up later. You will always find body and possibly attachments, and that's kind of it. And the type you find here, that dictates the schema of the body. But so the body is kind of opaque. You are not necessarily, if you don't know what kind of message you are working with, you don't know what kind of body you're going to find, but the type tells you, gives you the knowledge of what to expect inside of the body. And second nice property is this attachment. So the DITCOM v2 message has these attachment fields where you, just like in email paradigm, you have an email and that can come with kind of attachments, right? So it's kind of same philosophy here. You have body and you can attach some kind of payloads into the attachments array. And then that's about it. Then it's up to the particular message and how it's defined to refer and somehow reuse possibly the attachments here using the attachments ID. So you can imagine, somewhere here would be type, would be field, which would have semantics defined as like this is field which is referring to some kind of attachments. I know you're a selfie picture, and you can find that selfie picture in attachment identified by certain ID in the attachments array. And then yeah, you can have those attachments with different encodings, base64 here, hashes. You see it's kind of illustrated here, different kind of attachment formats internally. But it kind of didcomv2 kind of gives you a high-level structure, and you know what to expect in general from the didcomv2 message. Whereas in didcomv1, it was very tailored already at a high level to like the very specific message type you were working with. And then second significant difference is the way the attachments work. So in didcomv1, there was multiple ways to work with attachments. I guess this was one of them, one of the approaches how to define attachments. There was more. There's Aries-RFC somewhere defining how these attachments worked. But the point is there was multiple flavors of attachments, and in didcomv2, it's kind of reduced to one selected flavor. So there's no multiple ways how to do attachments. So it's kind of unifying things and makes it simpler to think about. And it's assuring that different didcomv2 protocols wouldn't choose different flavor of attachments, because that's something what was happening in didcomv1, where different protocols chose different way to deal with attachments, and it was a bit of a mess. So again, this is a nice improvement done in didcomv2. And so given these differences between the didcomv1 and didcomv2, in order to bring didcomv2 to Aries-vcx, I think we would have to rebuild new messages crate to kind of reflect this high-level structure, and then build out those specific messages defined for didcomv2 protocols. And at the current moment, there's not even those didcomv2, those popular protocols we work in didcomv1, like issuance and verifications. Those are like barely yet like defined and accepted. So I don't think there's a place right now where you can find established, stable didcomv2 based issuance, credential issuance, and presentation. And there was discussions about defining these protocols for didcomv2 on some of the recent Aries workgroup calls. So yeah, those discussions are happening, and as a part of them, there was also proposals to basically use this as a chance to reduce the existing issuance and presentation protocols as much as possible, drop the things the community is not using, and make it simpler. So yeah, I think that's the kind of action steps. And I think definitely the high-level structure kind of preparation for didcomv2 could start happening already, potentially. But then the specific protocols that might take some time actually to mature. And maybe second things I'm not exactly sure about. There's probably also differences on the like encryption level between the didcomv1 and didcomv2. Some didcomv2 define number of these envelopes, how you wrap up these JSON structures we're looking at just now. how you encrypt them, decrypt them, wrap them. And I'm just not sure how different this is from Ditcom v1, but I assume there might be some differences. That would be something we would have to explore for Ditcom v2.
Yeah, thanks for summarizing. That makes sense. Yeah, it seems like the main thing that might need waiting on is all the Aries RFCs to be redefined in the V2 structure, the new bodies and attachments and things like that.
Mm.
Yeah, but you're definitely right that the foundation can be built right now with the existing spec. Yeah.
Yeah, and oh, one more actually significant difference between Ditcom v1 and Ditcom v2 is the fact that in Ditcom v2 there's no need for a DID exchange anymore. Are you familiar with this I don't know, concept, George? Because there's these two attributes. Are you familiar with this?
Right. So they're saying that all the two fields you should be able to derive like a service endpoint from the did, and that's how
Yeah.
you.
So in
Okay.
Ditcom v2, in every message you include your DID, and so there's still idea of the invitations. So you get invitation and you kind of process it as usual, but that invitation would typically also contain some kind of attachment, maybe presentation request attachment in the invitation. And so in Ditcom v2, in Ditcom v1, when you find this kind of invitation, you would first have to do the DID exchange or connection protocol if you already don't have the connection established. And then follow it up with the actual response on that attached particular protocol message, for example, presentation request. So we actually two protocols, one after each other, which can be like a bit slow for it can propagate to the user experience. And so then there was invented something like connectionless presentation in Ditcom v2 as a Aries RFC. We don't implement that in Aries-vcx actually, but the cool thing is there's no need for it in Ditcom v2, and there's also no need for DID exchange or connection protocol, because that connection establishment or reuse is just kind of built in built into Ditcom v2 itself, because thanks to these two fields. So you find the invitation and you basically reply, and you find some attachment, as we said, presentation request. Now what you really want to do basically is just reply that presentation as soon as possible. And you can do it, and you can do it securely because, well, given you have the invitation from your counterparty received through some secure channel, you can reply to that. You can you can resolve the service endpoint as usual with the invitations, but instead of replying with something like connection request, you just reply with the presentation message, but you include your DID. So this would be the presentation you are sending, and as per my understanding, you would include here let's say your peer DID. And so once the counterparty, the original invitation sender, receives your presentation, they now have your DID, which ultimately means that you too have established connection. You know each other's DID documents. And if there's a need, if there's a need for the original invitation sender rotate their DID, they can now do that thanks to the recently added did rotate protocol. I'm not even sure if there's need for that actually. I guess not. A point being, you always exchange your DIDs as a part of the DITCOM-v2 communication itself. And so that's kind of reducing the need for having explicit DIT exchange protocol, because it already inherently happens in DITCOM-v2, where every time you send a message to your counterparty, you also tell them what is your DID and where they shall send the response to your message. And I guess that itself also enables to essentially rotate your DIDs all the time, I think.
Is there like a from field? I don't know. I guess I assumed that the to field would be you, like the recipients did, I guess.
I understand it, like when you construct some kind of DITCOM-v2 message, you put your own DID, some kind of peer DID to the to field. From the point of view, like when you give that message to the counterparty, the to field tells them where they shall send the message to, to which DID they should reply.
Okay. Wow.
Check it out. Is it documented? It must be.
Cool. Right. So you send me an invitation, QR code or whatever, and then I can immediately reply with, say, a credential request or a credential proposal, something like that.
Yes, exactly. But you are okay. So apparently the to field is optional. And it seems like it's pretty well, explicit explanation here. Let's read it out. We have 3 minutes left. Let's read it out loud for the sake of clarity and collective learning. So 2 is optional. Identifier for recipients must be array of strings where each element is valid DID or DID URL without the fragment component. That identifies a member of the message intended audience. Okay, now I'm getting a little bit confused. It's okay. These values are useful for recipients to know which of their keys can be used for decryption. It's not possible for one recipient to verify that the message was sent to a different recipient. When Alice sends some plain text message to Bob and Carol, it is by inspecting this header that the recipients learn the message was sent to both of them. Okay, then apparently what I was saying seems to be wrong, and I had wrong understanding of it. If the header is omitted, each recipient should assume there's only one recipient, much like sent only to BCC addresses. For signed messages, there are specific requirements around properly defining to header outline in DITCOM signed message definition above. This prevents certain kind of forwarding attacks where message was not meant for a given recipient is forwarded along with its signature to a recipient when the message that might be blindly trusted because of the signature. From. Okay, there's a from field, and that's optional. So this is probably what I was actually talking about. Required when the message is encrypted via auth crypt. Same identifier. the from attribute must be string that is valid DID or DID URL, which identifies the sender of the message. When a message is encrypted, the sender key must be authorized for this encryption by this DID. Yeah. So yeah, I think the from field is is what enables the mechanism I was describing. I mean, I have some learnings studying to do here as well, but this was from my understanding the big proposition of Bitcoin V2 that you don't need did exchange thanks to, I guess, mainly the from field, not actually to field. Both of them are DIDs. But I suppose that the from field is how the counterparty learns where to send the reply to. That's what I understand from it so far.
Cool. Yeah, it seems like a powerful spec. Can build a lot out of it.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to Bitcoin V2 becoming a thing, becoming more prominent, because it's because I guess of the I feel like it has much better chances of adoption because of the way it's documented. It's like single spec. Look here, this is Bitcoin V2, and you know, it's one document which kind of is underpinning for all the other protocols which might exist on top of Bitcoin V2, whereas at Bitcoin V1 it just kind of scattered all over the GitHub. And if I'm supposed to explain Bitcoin V1 to someone, it's a bit challenging because I don't know which RFC to send them to. It's like whole collection of RFCs, not one coherent thing. So I think for that kind of from adoption perspective, and also the design perspective, there's big advantages in Bitcoin V2. Yeah, we didn't cover this, but actually, so I spent the last week's call just kind of podcast style talking about this. So there's recording out there on YouTube. Anyone can have a look if interested. I was just kind of rambling thoughts, brainstorming I had about this. This is revisited, refined version of my diagram from the 2 weeks ago. Not probably not at the final stage, but it's a bit nicer. And there's some ideas, outlines. It will be nice to see something like this becoming reality, but we'll see what time gives. So yeah, we are a bit over time. I'll wrap it up now. Unless you have anything else to add on, or you have anything else you would like to share.
Not from me.
Okay, well, thank you for coming, and have a great rest of the week, and see you next time. Cheers.
Cool. Cheers. Thanks, guys. See ya.
Thank you. Nice week.